Hello everybody and welcome along to this video, which is Mr. Johnson Teaches Scrooge, the character revision. This is part of my series of videos looking at A Christmas Carol and revising key parts of it, and you'll find A Christmas Carol as part of your English Literature GCSE. It's on paper 1 and it's section B, making it the second part of that first exam that you sit for your English. And what you want to do during this video is be ready to pause, make your own notes, particularly bullet points will be very useful here, so you've got something at the end of it which can form part of your revision, and particularly something that you can look back on to remember any key ideas. So obviously pause and rewatch any bits that you need to, and overall I'm going to be going through the character of Scrooge and looking at some possible ideas that you could put down about him. So let's get started then, and let's start with the fact that, if I can click on here, who is Scrooge? So if we go back to the very basics, Ebenezer Scrooge is a wealthy businessman. He loans money to others. His place of work is described as the counting house, suggesting obviously plenty of money that's coming in. So he seems to be a wealthy businessman, as it said. He was also in business with Jacob Marley, who was his business partner, and that was until Marley's death, which at the start of the book was 7 years ago, that very night on Christmas Eve. He employs Bob Cratchit as his clerk. A clerk is somebody who does sort of some of the administration work, you would say. So particularly like copying up of letters and keeping accounts and so forth. So that's who Bob Cratchit is, and he becomes a real key character in the book. And then also let's focus on the fact that Scrooge is a protagonist, but ultimately he finds salvation by being made to see the error of his ways. So he's a protagonist, but he's maybe not a typical protagonist. Unlike a character like Macbeth, I wouldn't describe him as an anti-hero by any means, but he certainly is unconventional, yet he is the main character who we identify with, so I would still use the word protagonist with him. At the bottom now, I've given you some bold words there which would make really good ones as part of your vocabulary to describe Scrooge. So I'm going to look at them really quickly here, but also look at them yourself, go on to Google or use a dictionary to find some definitions. So he definitely begins as miserly and misanthropic, so almost very much anti-humanity, keeps himself to himself, and he's also covetous, and then finally becomes remorseful, humble, and also enlightened as well. And philanthropic is a word which you'll see later on in this video. So that's a quick summary about the character overall, and as you see him pictured there in the Disney version, that's Jim Carrey who was playing him there. And then what does he do? And a key question particularly when it comes to literature, does he change? Well, Scrooge starts the novella by being miserly and unkind to those who seek his company or his support. He's very rude to his nephew, charity men who come collecting money for the people who are struggling, and then also to a carol singer as well. So he has these multiple very unpleasant conversations with these people, goes back home, sees the ghost of Jacob Marley. This is Christmas Eve, and Marley gives him a warning that if he doesn't change his ways, then ultimately Scrooge's destiny is going to be a very bleak one. Then he gets transported back by the series of ghosts. So firstly, you've got the ghost of Christmas past who takes Scrooge back to his childhood. He sees his old school where he went to school, of course, and sees himself as a young boy and very lonely. He sees his former boss, that's Fezziwig, and sees how kind Fezziwig is to his employees, unlike Scrooge. And then also Scrooge then witnesses the breaking up of the marriage proposal between him and Belle as well, because Belle says about how much he's changed. And those are the key parts of the Ghost of Christmas Past. Then he sees the Ghost of Christmas Present, and he sees like the happiness associated with Christmas in various locations. A particular standout one would be when he gets taken round to the Cratchit's house and sees that although they have only a small amount of food, a very meagre amount, actually they are still happy because they've got family and love and togetherness, unlike Scrooge. Finally, Scrooge gets to see the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, often incorrectly called the Ghost of Christmas Future, but it is the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. And he sees the responses of other people who find pleasure or joy or satisfaction in Scrooge's death, and that almost wakes him up when he finally realises, and he kneels down at the gravestone when he sees it his own grave and that all of those people were talking about him. He realises the error of his ways, and when he wakes up he suddenly finds that actually he's still very much alive, but also it's Christmas Day of the present, so he's back and has a chance to actually to change his ways. And as I put there, he then starts to make amends for his bad actions at the very end of the novella. Right, moving on then. So here are some key quotes for you. This is by no means a full list of quotes. I wouldn't be able to fit them all on here. For me, this is a selection which maybe covers the beginning, a little bit of the middle, but certainly the end of Scrooge. So you can contrast, because my previous question was, does he change? Yes, absolutely he does. He goes from being this very cruel, misanthropic, miserly character into this kind, benevolent character who realises the error of his ways and tries to help other people. At the top there is a list of adjectives used in the very beginning in stave 1, so that's chapter 1, squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. Loads of great adjectives for you. The phrase bar humbug is particularly memorable, but it's a really useful one because you can use it to illustrate Scrooge's really negative outlook on life and his real cruelty and just miserly ways. Just humbug, I won't believe it, is essentially what humbug means. It's definitely not the mint sweet that he is referring to. Next one down after that is a really good quote because it links to the idea of Thomas Malthus. I'll touch on him again in a minute in the video, but you'll actually find a full explanation of that on a separate video in this playlist, so make sure you watch that if you don't have any idea what I'm talking about, or even if you do, it's good revision. If they'd rather die, they better do it and decrease the surplus population is particularly cruel and shows, like, again, that very misanthropic side of Scrooge. Couple that with every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas, being boiled with his own pudding and buried with that stake of holly through the heart, is particularly cruel, and those are all quotes from stave 1. The second quote down from that one then is stave 2, and that's the another idol has displaced me, a golden one. That's a really good one as well. That's the breaking up of Scrooge and Belle, and that's Belle who actually says that as well to Scrooge, and it really shows that focus he has on money, that an idol, what idol, something you look up is an idol, well, she's talking about the money, and he treats it almost as something he actually prizes and almost loves, perhaps, and more than her. And then finally we've got quotes which come from, that's miscorrectly labelled in fact as well, that one, because the sponge away the writing on this stone is actually stave 4, not stave 5. But there it is anyway. Actually shows that he's got that regret. Following those final two quotes, that next one is a great one, that list, because it very much contrasts with that first one at the top of the screen of a being of squeezing, wrenching, grasping, etc. There you've got him with those lovely similes: light as a feather, happy as an angel, merry as a schoolboy, giddy as a drunken man. 4 similes. And again, you could use that to actually just show how much he's changed. And also, another one which contrasts with another one on my screen there, about every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas quote, really links nicely with that bottom one of I will honour Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. Again, you're trying to find ways here you can show the juxtaposition in those quotes and just how much he's changed. Here come a list of themes that you could maybe link Scrooge with, perhaps. So what we've got there, I've put transformation because of the change that happens in him. Family, in the sense that he rejects family but comes to realise the importance of family, which is a real theme of Christmas. Responsibility generally, actually taking responsibility for your actions, and he sees the impact that what he does has on other people. For example, Bob Cratchit. Christmas, of course, is the theme of a book which has the word Christmas in it, but go off and look at the video in a minute that's also on my channel where I explore the theme of Christmas, because actually it is certainly a theme. Redemption links very much to transformation. To redeem yourself is to make up for your bad ways, so redemption is certainly a theme there. Greed as well, because Scrooge very much is greedy and we see a consequence of that greed. And also love, because actually he comes to realise the importance of family and love at Christmas time, and he does show that love as well. Now, what I've got going on here then is anything else you might be able to say about him. Well, these are some points I would make about Scrooge. The fact he starts off as malevolent and changes to benevolent. Malevolent is almost really cruel and is sort of showing unkindness towards other people, and benevolent is very much the opposite. It's the antonym of that word. So again, I'm not going to have time in this video to talk fully about them. Look those words up if they're new to you, just so you're really confident in their definitions. He also goes from being misanthropic, a word I've used earlier in the video, to philanthropic, which is where he gives that money to the charity and shows kindness towards other human beings. Again, 2 words which are definitely worth looking up. Beneath that, on the second bullet point then, Scrooge commits sins. Let's not look past that. This actually is a novel which definitely has religious undertones, I would say, is a lovely phrase you could use. Religious undertones, as in religion is running underneath the surface of it. But in some ways it's quite explicit as well. The fact that this is a Christmas carol and Christmas is a religious festival, actually when we see Scrooge acting as sinful, in fact that quote previously said he was a covetous old sinner, we can actually see him being punished for that, how he drives people away, how he's very lonely, and ultimately when we see the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, and he sees his future as a very bleak one where no one loves him, actually you can see how the sins are punished there, and then he gets this chance of salvation. And it's very much a theme of Christianity, that Jesus died for our sins, and in fact that repenting is something that we can all do. And that's what I put at that third bullet point, really. We are all capable of change. We learn that through Scrooge. Scrooge, who is the archetypal Victorian businessman I put down there. If an archetypal, cruel, greedy businessman like Scrooge can change, we all can change. And that is a definite message that comes through from Charles Dickens. And he's writing, let's not forget, for a wealthy audience. This book wouldn't have been affordable to many people in the country, so the sorts of people who are buying it are wealthier, and therefore Dickens is almost trying to talk directly to them and maybe make them realise that perhaps they could look at their ways. Are they living a kind life, or are they a bit too much like Scrooge? So really try and remember that message whenever you write about A Christmas Carol in your English. Finally, as I've said there, you've got the archetypal Victorian businessman, but let's link that to Thomas Malthus and the Malthusian principle that I've put in brackets there. Once again, I've referred to it already. There is another video on my channel, so do check that one out. Possible exam questions? Well, let's have a little look at this then. You've got some of these here. So in brackets in that top question, I've put, starting with this extract, so it comes from stave 4, that is, and I put there, the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, I think I should say, rather than M. But nevertheless, how Scrooge's fears were explored was that year's question. You can see the year in brackets. Beneath that, we had a question relating to Marley and how Dickens uses the ghosts to help Scrooge change his attitudes and behaviour. And then also other options, well, those are other sample questions you can see. With only one lead character and one absolutely central character in this, you're almost certainly going to see Scrooge as the named character. Possibly the Cratchits, and they have been referred to before, but you definitely need to be confident with Scrooge, because whatever you write, whatever question it may be, if it isn't directly about Scrooge, he is still somebody who's going to feature in your answer. So make sure that you think about how you could link him to different things like the suffering of the poor. Well, who causes that? Scrooge does, ultimately, in the way he treats Bob Cratchit, which is representative more widely of how rich class treat poor class, and so forth. So you can see those questions there. As a summary here at the end, these are some questions you could quickly check your understanding of Scrooge with. So there they are. I'm going to leave those on the screen. I'm going to take this opportunity to say thank you very much for watching this video. If you find my videos useful, then please do subscribe. I've never said this before, so this is the first time I'm going to say feel free to like the video if you did like it. Comments are obviously there as well. And above all else, look at other videos. And a key thing, of course, with English language revision, watching videos like this is important, but actually going off and having a go at practice questions. Nothing can prepare you better for writing an answer to a question than practicing writing an answer to a question. And that's where I'm going to leave it. I'm going to say thank you very much for everybody watching, and I wish you the very best of luck when it comes to your exams. Thank you, and goodbye.